Hello folks, today we are going to get into fundamentals. These tips that I'm presenting you today are hidden tips that will help you min-max and clear fights in less time and make your runs better in general. These tips are not explicitly said in one of the game's tutorials, it's hidden after all. These are all just simple ways to maximize your gameplay to prevent skill issue in clearing slower compared to other players regardless of your builds. First step that you have to optimize is character positions. Back in the early days, players will tell you that party positioning is very important, and it's sort of become a bit lost as it's been taken for granted. But the premise of this is that when enemies hit a character, that character gains energy. More likely than not, enemies have blast attacks instead of AoEs, meaning if an enemy targets a certain character that's, let's say, at the far left, they will miss the other characters on the right. This can be pretty relevant, as you may notice in some of your runs, your energy is just a few more energy points to max out, and you would have cleared that cycle if your ultimate was ready. A worst case is one of your teammates was down because of the blast and you didn't position them correctly. That feels pretty bad, so how do we position our characters correctly? Every path in the game has an inherent taunt value. There are certain passives also that increase and decrease this taunt value. Higher taunt value is likely to get hit, lower means less. To put it simply, if you want to take less damage, putting high taunt to the far side allows blast attacks to more likely miss the other far side. You can then put a harmony character and even your DPS that wants energy or that can counter right next to them. This can go a long way into preventing your run from ending or squeeze out more counters for less cycles. If you don't mind getting hit because your tank is strong enough though, put your higher taunt values in the middle so they can get more consistent energy for the adjacent allies. Keep this in mind whenever you build a team, as it can truly make a difference in all the endgame content. Next is to optimize your crowd control debuffs. Crowd control debuffs are one of the trickier ways to sustain and needs a fairly high skill floor and a dash of luck to be really effective. This is because the timing of your freeze applications matter a lot in how much damage you mitigate. The stronger freezes are also tied to ultimates, so you are very much punished if you miss the perfect timing. To give a demonstration, here is March 7th. In facing elites and stronger bosses, they have 2 or more turns in a row. If I apply my freeze right now, just as the enemy is about to take a turn, you notice that the boss does freeze, and when they unfreeze, they barely move from the action order and in a short time is back to attacking me. If I wait for the enemy to move though on their first turn, and I use my ultimate in between, you can see that the second attack just doesn't happen at all since they're frozen, and they are much further back while the freeze is still there, giving me enough distance to get a shield for when they do unfreeze, and energy to freeze them again. This is also the case for Welt's imprisonment. This type of attack cancelling also works when you break an enemy. So all this to say, if you want to play with mechanics to control boss turns, just make note that controlling bosses in between their 2 turns cancels their second turn altogether while retaining the debuff. Extending buffs. This is a mechanic that is a bit less known than the others, and it's exactly what it says on the tin. There's 2 ways you can do this, the weird way and the normal way. The normal way is something like this. Here, I have Tingyun using her ult on Herta before Herta takes a turn and immediately use Herta's ultimate. Tingyun's ult activates Hackerspace, which increases speed, and a buff that gives a speed buff after ult use. These speed buffs after Herta's turn is decreased. If I use Tingyun's ult and Herta's ult while Herta is on her turn though, these speed buffs do not decrease. This can give you just enough speed to reach certain speed breakpoints for some really big min-maxing stuff. The weird way is exclusive to only a few characters and can extend more types of buffs. If you notice, Blade skill activates a Hellscape buff for 3 turns. But if you count how many enhanced basic attacks he does, it's actually 4. This is because Blade skill has the special property of extending buffs. Let's demonstrate this with Bronya and Herta. Bronya's ultimate buff reduces duration directly after Herta's turn.
とうに嵐に踏み入った守るべき者のために打ち崩せ。
If we do this with Blade right after he skills, the buff is still 2 turns after Blade's turn.
我々はとうに嵐に踏み入った守るべき者のために打ち崩せ。 記録開始。
Do note that this weird method is a very rare property, but it is good to note of it for future characters. Either way, this optimization can actually make or break your cycle count, and try to do it as much as possible. Lastly, and this is kind of just a throwaway, anybody who's played RPGs already instinctually learns this, as when an elite does get defeated, you do lose damage like this instead of just balancing their HP and saving your damage this way. It sounds obvious, I know, but you'd be surprised how many people do this and fail their run. Anyway, I hope you liked this little video. Do the algorithm stuff. Bye bye.